Hello and happy fall, y'all. I'm Jack Watson, UI UX designer, illustrator, animator, donut connoisseur, lots of things. And we've got a fun autumn themed design challenge today. Let me know in the chat if you call it fall or autumn. I know that's a hot topic. So today we're making tote bags for apple picking at an orchard, like an apple orchard or a pumpkin patch, but it could be a tote bag for carrying your favorite apple cider donuts or any fall festival or summer festival if you're not feeling fall that you plan on attending. We'll be using the Mockup beta feature in Illustrator. I know that's been a popular request. And before we begin, there are links in the description below this video where you can find a link to download your free resources to create along with us. So I have put together a starter file for you today with some assets that you can use. We've got some little leaves here. Of course, I've always got notes. I've always got too many notes about what we're covering in this stream. You can feel free to go ahead and use this color palette. You can choose to use any of the stuff that you want to use in here or start from scratch. It's really totally up to you. But you'll notice I've also got these Adobe Stock assets that I pulled in here today because our mock-up image is going to need to be raster art. So we're going to be using Adobe Stocks. So with the Mockup beta, we're going to be using this raster artwork in the background, a PNG or a JPEG, and we'll be using the Mockup beta tool to take our vector art from Illustrator and mock it up on these raster images. So let me show you where you can source these, stock.adobe.com. I've got these links all for you that we're going to be talking about in the resources section of your starter file if you're looking for those. And from here, these are free resources since we're all about learning today. So in the drop down, I've picked free it'll be probably set to all when you click on this link. And to get started, I'm just going to search for tote. Just type in tote. It's that simple. And we're going to get a bunch of examples that are going to get pulled up here from the free assets that we can use. Now, if you're creating this for a client, I'd recommend looking at the paid images as well, and I'll explain why in a second. But to begin with, though, we're just going to take a look at the results, and we're going to go through how you can go ahead and pull these into your Illustrator file. So I'm just going to kind of scroll through here. We're going to look at all these different assets, and once we kind of find one that we like, maybe we like, let's see, let's go ahead and license like this one here. So let's say we like this one. You're going to click on this blue license button. And when you do that, it's gonna load, it's gonna do a couple things. It's gonna download to your downloads folder, and then it's gonna give you this little pop-up over here that says manage with a library where it's saving to. Make sure you note down where it's saving that file to. If you want to access your Adobe Stock assets from a library, you're gonna wanna make sure that you note down or click on that little manage that pops up to pick which library you want to save it to. You don't have to use a library. It's going to download that to your downloads folder on your operating system, and you can just pull it in that way. But if you want to work with libraries, just make sure you know where you saved it to. It's not a huge deal. You just might, if you missed that or you don't know where it's saved to, you can navigate to it later and change the location, but just wanted to make a note of that. So when looking for mockups, I'll give you a little pro tip here. When I'm looking for mockups, you want to find something that fits the look and feel of the project that you're working on. So plain mockups like this are fine. Well, these aren't very plain actually. Like this is fine. But if you want to take it to the next level, find something that feels like a natural fit for the product. In this case, in our starter file, I've pulled examples that are very fall themed, very fall looking. So this is going to help sell your concepts to your clients. They can better picture the design and context it would actually be used. If this was like a shopping tote bag for like a farmer's market or something like that, you'd want to use images that kind of reflect that. So that's why I mentioned that you might need to go outside of free assets to find something that works for your specific client. But before we get back into Illustrator and start working on this, one more destination we need to hit up, and that's going to be Adobe Fonts. I love Adobe Fonts. And I'm gonna walk you through how I kind of navigate it. So we're gonna need to pick a font because we're gonna have some text on our tote bag. I'm a big pun person, you know, I love wordplay. So I've got a couple examples actually in your starter file of Apple. I've named this section Apple phrases. So if you want to use one of these, feel free to. Otherwise, you can. I'm sure there are plenty of folks. I know Clever is in our chat. I'm sure that Clever's got some great Apple puns for me if you want to throw them in the chat. I'm going to go to Browse All, and that's going to, once this loads, it's going to give me a sidebar here. It's got different sections. There's a lot going on the screen, right? So, you know, you get a little preview. This is a preview of the fonts that you can add and use in your Adobe apps. On the left here, though, I want to call attention to these filters. And at the top, we've got tags. And tags are going to be like the way a font kind of like feels. It's kind of like you got like some adjectives, funky, fun, friendly, like the characteristics of the font and how it kind of feels. And then down here, classification. These are types of fonts. Sans serif, those are two big ones. Sans serif means that it means no serifs. Serifs are the little accents. If I click on this, it'll give you a little demonstration. You can see those little ornamental accents. And if you want to disable or enable any of these, you just click on and off to turn them on and off. And then down here under properties, these are more like the visual characteristics of the font. The weight, the width, like how condensed or not it is. So you can kind of go through here and pick and choose which ones you want to apply. For today, I find the tags sometimes they'll have seasonal tags. So in this case, there's a horror tag, which is not quite fall, maybe a little bit more Halloween, but I'm sure we can find a font here that's going to kind of work for us. So I'm going to click on the horror to navigate into there. We can kind of do a browse here, and I'm looking for something. This is an Apple themed design, so I'm going to look for something that has characteristics of that. I'm going to look for something that maybe looks like an apple tree with like tapered edges or something like that. Maybe something like this, but not as horror looking. So I'm just going to do a browse through here real quick. And this one could work here with the like curly edges. If you've ever seen an apple tree, they have like really gnarly branches, the way they kind of hang down. So I'm kind of looking for something that has those visual characteristics. So I like this one actually, Mr. Darcy. So you can click on it to get a larger view, and you could type in some sample text if you wanted to see what it looked like. But I'm going to go up here and I'm going to hit Add Family. It's going to add those fonts for me, and then we're going to hop back over to Illustrator and we're going to start using them. So you can see down here that it's added those to my apps. Hopping back over to Illustrator, I am going to start creating now. And we're going to use the type tool today. So we're going to start with the type tool. It's the giant T. And if we drag with the type tool, click and drag, we're going to get something called area type. It's going to fill with placeholder. We're not going to use that. We're going to be using point type, which is when you just click to make a point. When you do that, you're just going to get a single lorem ipsum text there. I'm going to make this larger. You can do this from the character panel in your control bar if you want. Clicking to open that up, I can just increase the font size so we can see a little bit better. Or I can drag the corner with my selection tool, holding down Shift to constrain and scale it up. If you don't hold down Shift, you're going to do weird things with your font. Don't do that. I mean, you can, but I'm not going to tell you what to do. But I don't actually want to do that for the style that I'm going for today. As long as you do something with intention, there's no one that can tell you it's wrong. So we've got our lorem ipsum text. I'm going to change this to be my font, which is Mr. Darcy. I'm going to go with a nice bold, nice looking font there. And I'm actually going to use 2 lines of text for this. So I'm going to pick one of these phrases here. I'm going to pick no bad apples at the top. I'm going to set this on 2 lines. So I'm going to type no bad first. And then I'm going to click to create another line of point text. I'm going to use the eyedropper to make sure I grab the same font style there. And then I'm going to type in apples. And in this case, the reason I'm setting my text on 2 separate lines is I want to play with the size a bit so that I can emphasize apples. So I'm going to make apples larger. And Val in our chat loves Mr. Darcy. It's a good font. It's a classy looking font. I'm not going to lie. So we're going to make this a little bit larger. And the nice thing about, playing with text like this, not only are you adding a little bit of hierarchy to this, but we can kind of create these spaces for our text to kind of fit together in more interesting ways visually. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to show you I'm going to show you a pro tip here with type. If you double click into your point text and you select a single character, you'll get this little pop-up. It might be a little bit hard to see. Let me kind of zoom in here. But you get these little pop-ups for alternate characters, and if you click on them as you hover over, you can change the style of individual letters. So if you wanted to give certain letters emphasis, like we want to emphasize this A or we want to emphasize this S, we can select them and we can add these alternate characters. They just kind of give prominence, or they'll have like different ornamental accents on them sometimes. to certain letters in your, and they're really great for monograms too. So I'm gonna also scale this up a little bit. So again, going into my character panel, I'm just gonna increase the size a little bit. Doesn't look like I'm having much luck there. So I'm actually gonna open it. I'm gonna open up my character panel from my window drop down. And we'll see if we can get it to work here. Oh, I was in the wrong menu. That's why I was changing the leading instead of the font size. All right, so I'm just scaling these up, and you'll see why in a sec. So I'm gonna make because as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking like this would be really nice if it fit kind of in between the two letters here. So we're gonna try this. I'm gonna scale it up. So we've added some prominence to our text now. I'm also gonna apply a color. So I'm gonna again grab the eyedropper tool. Carol's saying, Jeff, that's the lighting. I know, I have my interface larger so it's easier for you guys to see, and I didn't realize I was changing the wrong setting. I'm glad we all figured it out together. All right, so I'm gonna go down here and I'm gonna grab one of my colors from my color palette. I'm gonna go with the darkest color. So you can see down here, if we take a look at my color palette, I've got mostly lighter values and then one really dark value. I'm gonna make my text in that darker value so that it has good contrast. I wanna make sure that my text is really visible on my design. So I want it to have, like, setting it in the darkest value is gonna make sure that it stands out against those lighter values. If you want more help on choosing colors and creating hierarchy, we've got tons of past challenges you can watch on demand on the Adobe Live YouTube channel if you go and subscribe and dig in over there. Speaking of, I've been talking to the chat over on YouTube and on Behance. We've got a live chat where you can hang out with everybody. If you're watching the replay, you can also leave comments on YouTube as well. So feel free to say hi and ask questions. All right, enough chatting. We need to create some apples. So I'm going to add, I'm going to start by creating half of an apple and we're going to mirror it. So over here in our tool panel, you can see we've got a pen tool and we've got the curvature pen tool. They just kind of sit next to each other. And the curvature pen tool is what we're going to be working with. And it's the one that's got like a little squiggly line coming off of it, kind of indicate what that does. And I'm going to choose that. And we're going to start to create this apple. We're going to build it sort of like symmetrically. So we're going to start at the middle of our apple, if you envision what an apple looks like, and we're going to draw out one side of it. So starting at the center, I'm going to click to make a point. And nothing's going to happen at first, I'm just going to have a point there. And when I'm working with this tool, I want to think about the direction that I want to go. So I'm going from the center of my apple, which kind of dips down, and it's going to go up and to the left. And when I do that, and I start to drag a line out, now you're going to see that the curvature pen tool is giving me a preview of those curves that it's creating. So I can start to get an idea of what my apple is going to look like on the left side as I start to draw it. And when I'm working with this, I want to place points where I want to hold the curve. So I want to hold a curve there. I want to keep that shape. So that's where I'm going to place a point. And now as I drag, it's kind of holding that shape for me, modifying it just a little bit on the other side so that it kind of keeps its shape there. So then we need to drag down at the bottom, kind of create the narrow part of the apple. And I'm going to create, it kind of comes up underneath at the bottom. So it kind of creates like that little part at the bottom of the apple where it sits. All right, so we've got some shapes here. I did make my apple very wide, so I need to have this kind of like aligned at the center. So I'm gonna drag with the direct selection tool to select the two innermost points, and I need to align them so that they are centered with each other. So at the top here, you can pick really any of these horizontal align options. If I zoom in, you can see how this works. There's a little line on either side, and the same with the vertical alignment options. Wherever that line is, it's showing you where you're going to be aligning to. And so if I get rid of that there, if I center align it, you can see it's going to bring those 2 points together. If I left align it, it's going to bring my point on the outside over to the center a little bit more. And that's fine. I think that looks fine. And we'll make some modifications to this in a second. So with the one side of my apple kind of sorted, I'm going to go to Object, Transform, and I'm going to choose Reflect because I need to make the opposite side of my apple. Now if I just use the Reflect tool as it is, it's only going to reflect it. It's not going to give me a copy. So it's going to take my original and just flip it for me, either horizontally, which is hamburger style, or hot dog style, vertically. And I want to make a copy. So instead of hitting OK, I'm going to hit Copy. And now I've got two shapes here. I can just drag this over to the opposite side. select both of these, either dragging to select with the direct selection tool or the regular selection tool. I'm gonna hit Command or Control J, and that's gonna join my two shapes. We're gonna do a couple more things here. We need to fix our apple's shape since I made it kind of wonky when I was drawing it. So I'm gonna drag to select the two innermost shapes here, or innermost points, again, similar to what we did when we joined these with the direct selection tool. And you can see, ooh, didn't mean to do that. You can see when I zoom in here, you get these little bullseyes. When I drag with those bullseyes, those are your live corners. It's gonna round out those corners for me. So we're gonna round out the bottom and the top edge of our apple a little bit. Now, another pro tip for you, one of my favorite use cases for the Curvature pen tool is fixing things that I've messed up. So if we go over here to grab the Curvature pen tool, I can actually grab with the Curvature pen tool and I actually can start to like pull out these side corners here to make my apple have a little bit of a wider shape here. And then I can also pull these up, so I can make some modifications. It's really handy for like, you can not only create curves kind of from the beginning, but you can modify shapes that you already have existing. So to give you maybe a better example, I'm gonna drag out a rectangle, grab the Curvature pen, and as I drag in the center, I can pull up or down, so I'm adding curves to my existing kind of shapes. So there we go. All right, so we've got our apple sorted out. Let's make a couple of copies of these, and we're gonna kind of place them around our design. We're gonna make them kind of in our different colors here. So using Command or Control C is gonna copy. Command or Control V, depending on your operating system, is gonna paste. I'm just gonna make a bunch of these. I don't know how many colors I need. Four or five is good. And then use the eyedropper tool again. I'm gonna grab the colors. So let's grab this color. Let's grab this color. Keeping in mind that my text is going to be that darker color, I'm going to actually skip using that for the time being, because I want to save that darker color just for my text so it stands out. And then I'm just dragging to select all of these and then holding down Shift again to scale it down a little bit. So we're going to create some smaller apples. We don't want them to be so large. And you can continue to add some details to these. So I've got some little leaves down here. If you want to add those to your apples, so I'm just going to drag them on in here. You can like scale them down, give our apples some leaves. You can give them some stems using like the pen tool if you wanted to, or just a line tool. Really, it's up to you. And the other thing I want to show you, I'll give you one little other pro tip here. We're going to select this one over here, and I'm going to add an offset path to this. So I'm going to go to Object, Path, Offset Path. I'm going to set it in the negative value. So right now it's offset by 10 in the positive, so it's going out of my shape. If I bring it down into the negative, I can create something that is going inside of my shape. And if I do that, and I change the outside of this to be my red, my darker red, now we can kind of play with like, maybe this is an apple that's been cut in half, you know, and we can delete these points here, delete that path, and then I'll just hit Command J to rejoin it. So now we've got maybe like a cut apple cut in half. All right, enough playing around. We need to put this together. Let's bring it all together. So I'm gonna grab my apples now and I'm gonna start to place them kind of around my text. And I mentioned before that I picked this font because it kind of looks like a tree, like it's got, you know, characteristics of it. So what we're gonna do is we're kind of place these around as if this is like an apple tree. So we're gonna kind of envision that our text is kind of ensnared in an apple tree, so to speak. And I would definitely recommend adding some more details to these apples so that they, you know, have a little bit more going on. But for the time being, we're moving fast, so we're gonna just kind of fit. And I'm fitting them into the spaces here created by my text. So anywhere that I've got kind of like an awkward gap or something like that, I'm thinking like, well, I could maybe like balance this out using another apple over here or something like that. And it looks a little bit crazy right now, but we're gonna fix that. So the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna add some branches. So I'm gonna go down here to my fill and stroke, and I'm gonna switch my fill and stroke so that my stroke, actually, you know what, I'm gonna grab my color first. So I'm gonna grab my lighter color. The branches are gonna be the lightest color of my design, which is this kind of pink salmon color. Swap the fill and stroke over here so that it's applied to a stroke instead of being a fill. Bring it to the front, and then I am gonna increase the size a little bit. So I wanna increase it so we can see our line a little bit better. I am going to use the pen tool for this, but you don't, it's up to you if you want to keep working the curvature pen tool, because the process is going to be, we're using curves again, so it's really up to you. But I'm going to start at the center of this apple, clicking to make a point, and the pen tool is a little bit more manual, so you have to drag these anchor handles out to create these curves. So I'm going to drag my anchor handle up straight, because that's the first direction I want my apple tree to follow, and I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to drag down, because I want to pull that curve down. So I'm kind of pulling my curve along these paths here to create branches. And once you're satisfied, you can hit escape, and that's going to kind of release the path that you have selected. And what I'm doing here, I'm going to move relatively fast for the sake of time, is I am adding branches, and I'm connecting them, working large to small. So I'm adding the main branches first, and then I'm going to go in and I can add some detail branches as we go. So I'm working large to small, and didn't connect that one quite right. I'm just connecting them back to the original base here. And apple trees kind of have an umbrella shape. If you've ever seen them, they kind of look like they're growing upside down. So I'm going to kind of try to recreate that sort of a thing. Again, I'm working pretty fast here. You can feel free to take your time and add a ton of little branches. Again, working large to small. I want to just get a bunch of large branches in, and then I can start to go in here and add smaller branches. And I probably will make these a little bit heavier even still. So there we go. I'm just gonna get some in here. And then once I'm kind of satisfied with the branches, if I select one of my paths and I go to select same appearance, it's gonna select all of the strokes that have that color applied. And I'm gonna hit Command G, Command or Control G to group. And this is my personal preference, how I like to work in this process. I'm gonna go to Object, Arrange, Send to Back to send it behind everything. Increase the weight a little bit more, fix this line. And now it's behind my text, so it's not distracting as I'm looking at this. And the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make an intertwine group. So I'm gonna select everything, I'm gonna go to Object, Intertwine, Make. When I do that, now I can go over with the intertwine tool selected, and I can pull forward any of the paths that I want to have cross over my text. Personally, I find this to be a lot easier than if I set my text behind my lines and I have to try and figure out, because generally I'm only bringing a few lines forward. I'm not bringing a lot of lines forward. So it's easier for me to look at and make sure that I have good readability if I have the illustration behind my text and I'm just clicking to bring what I want forward. All right, to move on to adding this design to our mockup, I'm going to grab one of my Adobe Stock assets here. I'm going to make sure this is a group, selecting everything again and hitting Command G, copy and paste, and we're going to place this over our bag where we want it. When I'm working with the mockup, I like to kind of place it where it's going to be before I use the tool, so that I know that like it's going to preview, it's going to give me that in that view. And there's two ways you can get to mockup. We can drag to select our vector asset in the foreground and our raster image in the background. And we can either go to Object, Mockup, Create, but what I'm going to recommend you do is you go to Window, Mockup. And the reason for that is that from the mockup window, you get these options in the drop-down. You can choose if you want to preview your design on different categories. So we can choose apparel if we wanted to see it kind of on different clothing. And once we're there, we can hit Create Mockup, and that's going to start to create a depth map for us. So what that means is it's going to create sort of an invisible object that lets us move our asset around our photo as if it's three-dimensional. And you'll see when it's done, it'll give you this circle, which is kind of like the widget that lets you manipulate this. So if we drag it around here, you'll see it starts to move around my bag as if it's placed on top of it. And we can also zoom in here, and in these at these points, you'll be able to get different, as you hover over, options to scale, again, holding down Shift and rotate. If you accidentally click off of this to get back, and you're like, I don't know how to get back to it, you've got three options in the control bar for editing the mockup. Edit mockup group, which is what we're at now. Edit image lets you edit the background image, or edit the content, which will get you back to your original ability to edit your mockup. So there we go. Pretty easy, huh? Just kind of scale this and get it into place kind of how you want there. And then over here on the right, you can see our design, what it would look like on t-shirts and stuff like this. This is maybe a little bit too dark. I think it looks okay on the sweatshirt though. All right, once you're happy with the design, you can export using File, Export for screens. I'm gonna save it to our desktop here. And you can upload it to our Discord. So if you wanted to get feedback on your design, you can just drag that file directly into your Discord window to share with everybody in Discord if you want to get feedback. And that link is again below in the description of the video, along with your starter file to create with us today. So back here. So thank everybody for working along with me on this design challenge in Illustrator. We went over the Mockup tool, Type, Intertwine, a little illustration. We're live once a week on Behance at behance.net/Adobe Live, and on the Adobe Live YouTube channel. Like Andrew said, the challenge or the time is changing, so stay tuned. But we've got more live streams coming up right after me today. So thanks everybody, and I will see you next time. Happy fall!